The best of downtown from 7 to 8 a.m. on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket and 92.9theticket.com. This is the best of downtown.
Well, good Sunday morning and welcome into a very special edition of the best of downtown. Usually at this time each week we bring you the best of the week that was. This time around, we thought we'd do something a little bit different. With the Waterfront Concert Series underway, music on the minds of a lot of people, we thought we would focus on some of the tremendous guests we've had from the world of music over the last 670 downtown programs. And so we're opening up the vaults today for some of our all-time favorites. You'll hear from some greats like Ben Folds, Guster's Brian Rosenworcel, Petula Clark, Henry Rollins, Gary Puckett, Mary Chapin Carpenter, and much more, all coming up this morning on our Best of Downtown special music edition today. And we begin with one of our absolutely favorite guests we've had. Rob Van Winkle, best known to the world as Vanilla Ice, joined us ostensibly to talk about his TV show on the DIY network. But, of course, we couldn't talk with Vanilla Ice without talking about his music career, including the early success he had with Ice Ice Baby.
Well, I mean, it started off when I was 14 years old. I used to break dance at the mall. I would spin on my head and people coming in and out of the mall, I'd throw me some change. I had a big ghetto blaster there, and I would chase the girls around the mall, eat some pizza, have some change left over, and I kind of learned how to hustle at a young age. I didn't think that much was going to happen from it. I just was really enjoying doing what I was doing. I was heavily influenced by the breakdancing movement. These movies like with Turbo and Ozone, Beat Street, and Breaking, and I would just go out and kind of live that lifestyle. And then it led on to when I was 16, I wrote my own record. I wrote Ice Ice Baby, and I was the opening act for the opening act for the opener, and for the Stop the Violence tour with Ice-T, Stetsasonic, EPMD, and Sir Mix-a-Lot. So I thought I was the man, at that point, and I was only in the 10th grade. And anyway, I went on a world tour, sold 160 million records, and it was an amazing adventure. And then you live this artificial lifestyle of being in front of thousands of people every night and on stage, and then when you come back to reality a few years later, you have to figure out what your purpose in life is and where you fit into real reality and real life, aside from the artificial musical life. And that's what I did, man. I had a weekend that lasted a few years, and I figured it out. But it's an amazing adventure, and I always believe in these little phrases that says, we are who we are because of who we were. So all my negatives and positives, everything that's happened in life, I've turned all to positives. And another phrase I live by is yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. So I take life day by day, and I wake up with a smile on my face, and I believe that smiles are contagious. So I try to smile as much as possible and enjoy life. And it seems like it's working out really well for me, and that energy gets spread around, and it's good karma. And I'm really appreciating and everything that's going on in life right now, and I love spreading some good news about the housing market out there because, people need some inspiration and motivation to live the American dream, which is own your own home and decorate it the way you want and make it personal. And I'm showing them some good ideas and motivating them and, giving them some good positive news out there. And that's the great thing about this show.
And you've got a book out as well.
We've got a lot of things going, man, and a lot of things in the fire, and I'm just super grateful, very humble, and just, enjoying life, man. I mean, it's amazing how we have a little cloud that'll kind of come over our lives at certain times. And the great thing about that is that, it helps you appreciate the great times. Because if every day was perfectly great, you really wouldn't appreciate it. You'd take it for granted. And the great thing is that we're all human, and without those clouds and those dark days or whatever, we wouldn't know what the good ones were. And I'm enjoying the good ones now. The clouds are gone, so it's a great transition.
Hey, you also got to be in a movie with Adam Sandler and Andy Samberg. That's my boy. What was that experience like?
Oh, that was great, man. I got to hang out with the legend Adam Sandler. He was awesome. The movie was hilarious. These guys were amazing, even off camera. They were always funny, always funny. Adam has a unique talent for creating the same thing, that good energy, so that when it is time to, no pressure, just good energy, let's get along, let's go play some basketball, crack some jokes, and be guys, and then we'll come back and film some cool movies, man. And it's like, you don't even get caught up in nerves or anything. He has a way of pulling out the best in people, and I'm just really, honored to be a part of it and everything. And the movie is hilarious. If you guys haven't seen it, see it. It's That's My Boy, and you'll definitely get a great kick out of it. And it's like Adam Sandler when he did, like Happy Gilmore back in the day. It's
right.
The raw Adam Sandler. So I love it, man. And I'm just, like I said, I'm honored to be a part of it and become great friends. I talk to him every other day, and he's just a super down-to-earth guy, and happy to be a part of it.
That's Vanilla Ice joining us here on the Best of Downtown, a special music edition for this Sunday morning on 92.9 The Ticket. When we come back, we'll have a couple of terrific musicians from last summer who graced the waterfront concert stage, Ben Folds and Guster's Brian Rosenworcel, coming up next on Downtown.
Yo, VIP, let's kick it.
Fans know that's the piano of the talented Ben Folds, who appeared on stage of the Waterfront Concert Series last summer along with Bare Naked Ladies and Guster. We had a chance to catch up with Ben this past winter when he was serving as a judge once again in the NBC television series The Sing-Off, a chance to honor a cappella music, a terrific show. And we talked with Ben Folds about the popularity of a cappella.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think if nothing else, as kind of as a hub, there's so many groups who connect with each other and producers and other talent through our show, and a lot of people involved in the show behind the scenes facilitate a lot of stuff for the groups because we're interested, so that's why I'm really glad it's back on the air. Even when it wasn't on the air last season, I know that all of us were still out there, either giving some of them studio time or connecting them with songwriters or other groups, and it's just something that I think everyone who's involved in this show is passionate about. It's amazing how well Pentatonics are doing. I mean, it's not amazing, really. It doesn't surprise me. I think if this is an era where if you're a star and you're making amazing music, I think people actually are open to whatever it is you're doing, and Pentatonics aren't discriminated against because they're a cappella, so I think it's time for that kind of music.
It's been a very busy year for you, back together with Darren Jesse and Robert Sledge, the Ben Folds 5. You came out with Sound of the Life of the Mind. You've got the Ben Folds 5 live album out now, and back on tour with the guys. What was that like, getting back together after several years of doing your own music?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, it'd been so long. We played together. We just fit. We just fit musically. It's something that we grew up this way, and so it was really nice. And we had a good tour, and I mean, we'll do it again some point. We spent most of the year touring together, and we did North America, and it's good fun.
Well, it was a great show here. You were here with Guster and Bare Naked Ladies, and I don't know if you remember this from your Bangor appearance, but in the middle of one of your songs, I believe the longest train in the history of railroads came through.
Yes, I do remember that. That was funny. What you realize about those trains is they're loud. I mean, I'm sitting in between a couple of wedges. It's probably 110 decibels, and that was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I wasn't expecting something louder to blow me off my seat. I think I literally probably skipped a beat. Everyone probably had to catch up with me, and it was very funny.
We'll try and keep them away next time you're here, Ben.
Oh, it adds to the day. That's the show I remember. That's good.
Ben Folds joining us here on the Best of Downtown, a special music edition for your Sunday morning. On that bill last summer down at the Waterfront Concert Stage, Guster, and we had a chance before that show to talk with their drummer, Brian Rosenworcel. Guster, if you're not familiar with them, a terrific band that's been together for in the neighborhood of 20 years now. And we talked with Brian Rosenworcel about how the band's been able to hang it together as one for 2 decades.
we like to take it right until the brink of murder, and then we kind of let go of the throat. No, we've somehow been able to exist as a family. We love each other, we hate each other, and we do this thing together, and we love it. We all have families now and kids now, so getting a few months out on the road to go play music and have a healthy break from your domestic life is really good for all of us. So this tour has been a lot of fun, and I think our next album will be one we, are really proud of. So, it just keeps going as long as it makes sense for all of us.
Yeah, the last studio album you came out with was, Easy Wonderful, 3 years ago. Are you working on a brand new one?
Yes, we are working at our own, Guster pace at a new one, which means that we almost have enough songs to go in the studio, but I wouldn't expect anything for another year.
Now, along with the great music, you guys are known for your sense of humor and interaction with the audience. One of the things that you guys will sometimes do is come out as your own opening act. Is there any chance we might see Trippin' Balls on stage Sunday?
Yeah, Trippin' Balls opened for us for an entire tour and played one 25-minute song in really thick hippie costumes. And a lot of the crowd did not know it was us. They just thought we had a really sucky opener. And that was fun. But we're on this package tour where we're not allowed to indulge in that kind of thing. But you never know. We're brewing ideas for future opening bands. And that was a lot of fun, especially when people figured out it was us about halfway through the horrible 25-minute song.
Well, now, I hope that this doesn't mean that there's a chance you won't be able to come out for the encore and maybe sing either Katy Perry's Firework or the theme from Cheers.
Well, you really did your homework. That's amazing. I did sing the theme from Cheers to close the show a few times, and I really have a terrible singing voice. I don't know. Anything's possible. Maybe we'll play King of the Road and end the Bangor curse.
Yeah, that would be perfect. We're talking with Brian Rosenworcel of Guster. They'll be on the waterfront Sunday night along with Bare Naked Ladies. Ben Folds 5, the Last Summer on Earth tour continues. Just in case the Mayans were off by a year, you have to be ready for this. Now, I have to tell you this. There was an interview in the Boston Globe yesterday with Ed Robertson and Ben Folds, and they asked a lot of interesting questions. One of them was, if all of the band members from the three groups on your tour played Scrabble, who would win? And Ed Robertson suggested that the last guy standing would be himself, Ben Folds, and your lead singer, Ryan Miller. Now, do you think Ryan would be able to pull this one out?
Ed is wrong. Ryan would be the first person out. You know what Scrabble these days always comes down to? Who knows the little dumb two-letter words, like QI is a word or something, and whoever memorized the Scrabble dictionary ends up getting the leg up, and that's when I bowed out of Scrabble because it just was frustrating, and I don't think anybody on our bus would be anywhere near in contention for that crown. That's a great question the Boston Globe asked Ed Robertson and
well,
Ben
yeah.
Folds.
Exactly. Well, they also brought up the fact that two of the bands on this bill, frankly, are lying to the public with their names. There's only three guys in Ben Folds 5, and fortunately, nobody in Bare Naked Ladies is naked.
And we probably have the worst band name of all three, but there's no lying in it. We're telling the truth. We just have Guster.
Now, listen, I know we said we do sports and other stuff here, and I understand when you talk to our producer, Brian Stackpole, you're a Mets fan. How's that working out for you?
I am a Mets fan, and I'm not going to go right to 1986 on this phone call, but it's the last thing we have left to hold on to, isn't it? It's been rough. We've had a lot of rough years, but we have 5 really great young starting pitchers. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic. If we could score more than one run a game, we would actually win a few games.
That's Guster's Brian Rosenworcel as we bring you the best of downtown, a special music edition for a Sunday morning. When we come back, we're going downtown with the gal who made it a smash hit nearly 50 years ago. Petula Clark is next on the best of downtown. It's a Sunday morning special edition of Downtown and the best of all music this morning here on 92.9 The Ticket, 929theticket.com.
It's a sign of the times that your love for me is getting so much.
One of the many top 10
stronger.
hits from Petula Clark. We've been trying for the longest time to get her on the show since we used her 1965 smash Downtown as the theme song for the show. And Stack, a couple of hurdles along the way, but finally we tracked her down in, I guess, what for us was the least likely place to find British songstress Pet Clark.
Yeah, in France. Not in downtown France either. Not like in Paris, just some suburb out by the ocean.
Yeah. Her husband is French. They've been married for many, many years, and she was kind enough to join us this past summer. We talked about her career as not only a singer, but as an actress in a number of movies and television shows, and we chatted about some of the very famous people she's worked with, including the great Fred Astaire.
Oh, I love Fred so much, and I think it was mutual. We had such fun making. We made a movie called Finian's Rainbow, and I played his daughter in it. And I was the last person to dance with Fred on the big screen, and you can imagine I was really nervous about it. But he made it so easy for me. He was a lovely man.
And, of course, you also did a movie with the great Peter O'Toole as well. That had to be a real treat, or at least an experience.
Yes, it was an experience, and it was a treat. Peter's quite sort of, well, certainly was anyway, notorious. He liked a drink or two, let's put it that way. And he's Irish, So, but when we were making Goodbye, Mr. Chips, he was playing a very serious character. He was playing a school teacher, an academic, and so he put the brakes on his drinking, but he was great fun. And I have to say that about 2 or 3 times I went out to dinner with him, and I finished up a bit tipsy too. I mean, you couldn't really go out. You couldn't go out with Peter without finishing up just a little bit tipsy.
Now, you also appeared on Broadway with another guest of our show. David Cassidy was on with us just a couple of weeks ago, and that had to be interesting because you both share the experience of reaching stardom when you were very young.
Yes, I think for David it was a difficult time in his life. A very different story to mine, of course. We did share that, but frankly, we didn't talk about it too much. We were having so much fun working together. We did a show called Blood Brothers together on Broadway, and then we took it out on the road all over the States, and we just had so much fun doing it. And he's, David didn't really want to be a pop star. He wanted to be a serious actor. And I can tell you from experience that he really is a very, very good actor.
Now, you were recently honored by France, receiving a commendation. Is it Commander of Arts and Letters?
Yes, I'm not quite sure what that means. But yes, I received that, and I'm also Commander of the British Empire, which came from the Queen, which is a great honor too. But these things are nice. Of course, they're nice. I'm not turning my nose up at them, but they're just moments in your life. The real privilege, really, for me is to go out on stage and sing for a real live audience, and that's what I like doing best.
Well, and you're still, you've got the new album out, you've got a big tour coming up later in the year. What is it that keeps you going out there when you've already achieved tremendous success? Is it just the need and the desire to perform, or is it the feedback that you get from the fans?
Well, it's a bit of both. I love going out and performing. That is what this business is about for me anyway. Making records, making movies, doing television is fine, but it's very technical, and it's really only when you get out in front of a real audience that you feel you're really performing. And people still want to come and see me, so and I enjoy doing it, so why not?
Well, and your voice remains a beautiful instrument, the voice of an angel, as someone once wrote. Do you do anything special to keep your voice in such great shape?
Voice of an angel. Well, I don't know about that. I don't do anything. I really feel very guilty about it because, when I was doing a show called Sunset Boulevard in London, the West End, and, it was a very tough show vocally, and I would be in my dressing room, I was the star of the show, and I would hear all over the theater, hearing the other performers warming up and doing all these vocal exercises, and I would be in my dressing room not doing anything at all, and I would feel really guilty. To answer your question, I don't do anything. I don't do anything at all, except I don't eat too much chocolate, but that's probably more to do with putting on weight than anything else. But
Petula Clark here on the Best of Downtown, a music edition for a Sunday morning. Coming up next, one of our favorites on the show, actor, activist, and all-around interesting guy, Henry Rollins, joins us next. It's the Best of Downtown. The Best of Downtown on a Sunday morning. Rich Kimball and Brian Stackpole with you. One of the most interesting guests we've had on the show is certainly one of the most interesting people in the entertainment business. He's been a success as a musician, as an actor, as a speaker, as an activist, and he continues to lead a very interesting life. Henry Rollins was going to be making an appearance in Maine last year when Stack had a chance to chat with him and began the conversation by talking about his work with the legendary Black Flag.
A long time ago, about 30-some years ago, I knew them. They were friends of mine, but they had a different singer. And I lived on an opposite coast. I was living in Washington, D.C. They were a California band. And at one point, their singer wanted to move to rhythm guitar, so the vocal spot was open, and they were holding auditions in New York. And they knew me, and they said, well, you got a big mouth. You're kind of crazy. Why don't you come up here and audition? And I took a train up there. I auditioned. I was working at a food store, an ice cream shop, for $3.75 an hour. So I had nothing going on that I couldn't find elsewhere. Minimum wage work in those days was easy to find. So I said, well, why not? And so I went up there and made the cut, quit my job, jumped on a Greyhound bus with a duffel bag. A few days later, met up with them on tour in Detroit. And that was July of 1981, and I never really looked back.
What were some of your musical influences growing up that got you into this form of music?
Well, hard rock initially, bands like Ted Nugent, Led Zeppelin, Van Halen, Aerosmith, just like stuff we would see at the local arena and stuff you hear on the radio. But then me and my friends in the neighborhood, we started hearing punk rock. So, Ramones, Sex Pistols, The Clash, bands like that became very influential on us. And then, we go see those bands, and you could get right up close to them, and that was always really fun. Nothing like seeing Led Zeppelin from like a block and a half away, which was cool, but nothing like standing right in front of the Bad Brains or the Cramps or what have you. And so we were very influenced and inspired by those smaller, more intense bands. And so now, I listen to all of that music, but I listen to a lot of other stuff. But that was the kind of music that kind of got us, very aware of things.
Now, for my money, your video Liar with the Henry Rollins Band is still one of my favorite music videos to this day. What really inspires you to create that kind of video and music that really created that video as well?
Well, it was an interesting idea for a song. It's one of those poisonous love songs where it gives the lie to all the great poetry of a love lyric, and it, kind of satirizes all of that. And so we made a video that was appropriate, where the mask gets pulled off and it's, human nature. And of course, thankfully, not all romantic endeavors end in that way. Is just that quite often people kind of delude themselves because you want the relationship to work. And so people will not see the bad parts of a relationship just because they cling so tenaciously to the good part. And that was a song just pointing out that, you're lying to yourself,
We're talking with Henry Rollins here on the Downtown Show for this Wednesday edition. Of course, you're not just a musician, as I talked about earlier in this interview, but you're also an actor as well, and you portrayed A.J. West on the very popular TV show Sons of Anarchy. Can you talk about the experience of being on that show?
Yeah, they're good people. There's not one person on that set who you wouldn't want to see again somewhere else. They're incredibly friendly and extraordinarily talented group of people as actors, and which is great. But it makes it even better that everyone was so easy to get along with, because they're very long days on those sets. It's like a 12 to 15-hour day, no problem. And the fact that everyone was so funny and into it and good, about everything made it, a breeze. It was 6 months straight of very solid work, and it was just a really good time. I mean, I must say I really enjoyed being with those people.
Now, what do you enjoy most? Do you enjoy being a musician, an actor, an author? What do you enjoy most if you could just pick one?
I like doing the talking shows the most, in that I think that's probably what I'm best suited for. And at this point in my life, I prefer working alone than working with other people. So, I can go on tour for months and months at a time. So I don't get lonely. I don't miss anything or anyone, which permits me to go on tour for like a year at a time, like I am right now. I've been out since January, and I'm not feeling like I want to not be on stage every night. I'm not missing my couch at home. I don't miss anything. And so these shows, when I'm by myself on stage, are very suited to, kind of how I am with things now.
And speaking of being on tour, you've been to almost every part of the globe. Is there any place that's one of your favorites, or a place that intrigues you?
Well, as far as places I like to return to, I really like Southeast Asia. I like Vietnam very much, and Cambodia. It's a really interesting part of the world culturally. And when you look at America's history, with Vietnam, it's just an interesting place to go see the museums and see the war from the Vietnamese perspective, and just the friendliness of the people. And the busyness of like the cities in Vietnam is very vigorous, very loud, not violent or dangerous, just very full on. It's really enjoyable. So I like all of that. I like Australia very much. I'm there for weeks at a time when I tour. I like the European continent a lot. But as far as, places that are very far away that have fascinated me, Afghanistan, I've been there a couple of times, and if I could go there and not risk, danger to my person, which I think is really a possibility, I would go back to Kabul and just walk around more, but I don't think that would potentially work out all that well for me, and I'm not looking for that kind of adventure. The Middle Eastern world is very interesting to me. The Middle Eastern countries, I've been to almost every country in the Middle East except for a couple. It's just a different kind of civility, a different kind of way people conduct themselves, which is just so different than the West. So all of this stuff, it can teach you a lot. You can learn a lot about things. I've been all over Africa, and that's always the hardest traveling I've ever done is African travel. Like a day in Africa, it feels like 3 days anywhere else. Or by the end of the day, you're just so tired because there's just so much coming at you. And it's a kind of a high caloric output to get through a day in Africa.
Henry Rollins here on the Best of Downtown, a music edition for a Sunday morning. A quick break, and when we return, one of those great legends from the 1960s, a guy who in 1968 had more hits on the charts than the Beatles. Gary Puckett, straight ahead on the Best of Downtown Music Edition.
Well, if you ever plan to motor west, Jack, take my way.
It's the Best of Downtown, a special music edition for your Sunday morning. One of the great voices in rock and roll, Gary Puckett, who had a bunch of smash hits in the 1960s with his group, The Union Gap. Gary came to Bangor a couple of years ago as a part of the Waterfront Concert Series. We had a chance to catch up with him from his home in Florida, and we talked about the fact that more than 4 decades since he first hit the top 40 charts, he continues to accumulate new fans.
They do, and I oftentimes will ask how old they are and ask them how they got to know the music, and oftentimes they'll say, well, you know, my parents played that music, or my grandparents play that music, and or they'll even say, I don't really care for the music of my generation, and I went looking for music that I could really embrace, and they find our music from the 60s and into the 70s, you know, and they say, gosh, it's just great music, and it's really good to see them there at the concerts because they love it, they have a great time with it. So, yeah, the audience keeps on growing. In fact, when Lori and I are out working in the landscape, we have some speakers out there, and we just turn on the music of the 60s and the 70s because that's kind of the best music as far as we're concerned.
Well, let's go back and take a look at your career. You're born in Hibbing, Minnesota, same hometown as Bob Dylan, but you grew up in Washington near the town of Union Gap, and then in college in the San Diego area started playing in bands there. The Outcasts, I think, was the first band, and you guys played a lot of the Stax records, a lot of the R&B stuff.
That's true. That was the music we kind of grew up on. Of course, I grew up through the 50s, you know, where we had Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis and the Everly Brothers and just a whole list of people from Platters and Coasters, Little Richard, Fats Domino, you know, Gene Vincent, just great music. And then into the 60s, of course, I just loved all the music of the English invasion, you know, the Beatles, the Kinks, you know, whoever, and you know, what can I say? It's just great music.
67, you guys became the Union Gap. Now, you've been asked this a million times. The Civil War uniforms, was that your idea?
Yes, it was. I had this interest in the Civil War at that period in my life. In fact, I still do. I have a small collection of, you know, great books and things about the Civil War, and one of the great things about that period in history was that photography had made some great advances, you know, and they could take photos that were just spectacular. And I would always just become enthralled with pictures of that era, you know, and the people, the places, the times, just everything about it. And during that period in time, if you recall, everybody was wearing the same clothing as you do of any era. You know, we had the platform shoes and the bell-bottom pants, hip-hugging pants, you know, leathers, tie-dyes, fringes, paisleys, etc. And I thought, you know, with all the competition out there, we should have a visual identity that might set us apart. And one day it just occurred to me that we could wear Union soldier outfits, me having been born in the North, and I kind of liked blue anyway, even though I was kind of a rebel of the times. But, you know, I thought Union soldier, and immediately I just thought Union Gap. It's in not where I lived, but it was a town right next door to where I lived, and I thought that's a great visual image and identity for us, and we can be the same and yet different, you know, so it worked. It definitely worked. There was a disc jockey program director in Columbus, Ohio, that was a Civil War buff, and he saw that picture that I fought valiantly to get on the very first record, which was Woman, Woman, Have You Got Cheating on Your Mind? And he saw the picture and said, this is a very, very good, authentic photo. He said, I wonder what the record sounds like. So with his curiosity, he found that he really liked Woman, Woman, and he put it on the station. I think it was WCOL, and it went to number one. So the Columbia, what is it I want to say, promotional people there from the regional office of Columbia Records saw that activity on the charts, and they called. I was living in San Diego at the time, and they said, we want to get you and your band back here to the Ohio area and promote this record because we believe that we might have a hit record here. So we went back there, and they put us to work in a club called Otto's Grotto, which was in the basement of the Sheraton Hotel, if I remember correctly. And in the daytime, it was the dead of winter. It was near Christmas time, and we went out and met a lot of the the program directors and disc jockeys and talked about the record and the group and all that kind of stuff, and they made it a hit. So thanks to all the fans out there who liked it as well.
We're talking to Gary Puckett here on Downtown. Yeah, Woman continues to sell over 15 million copies worldwide, and that led into just a phenomenal 1968, a string of gold records, Young Girl, Lady Willpower, Over You, a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist, and maybe most impressive, the fact that you guys outsold the Beatles that year.
I just tell everybody the Beatles were having a bad year. But, I think, there is some truth to that little blurb in our history. So I'm pleased to wear that little badge of honor years later, but I'm a huge Beatles fan, so I find it a little unbelievable myself.
Well, after that, you guys looked to kind of get your own direction, get from out under the wing of your producer, Jerry Fuller, and you had a top 10 hit with This Girl Is a Woman Now. You went off on a solo career. Did, I think, a real underappreciated song that I love. I just don't know what to do with myself.
Thank you.
But as often happens in the business, and maybe even more so in that era, if you don't have the record company's support and the promotional strength behind you, you can turn out all the great records in the world, but they don't sell the way they used to because the company's not backing you.
Yeah, oftentimes that's really the very truth of it, but once in a while, you do have somebody out there that will champion the sound or something, and a disc jockey, a program director, somebody like that might say, well, gee, this group really deserves the chance. But it's more often the other way around, where if you don't have that machinery behind you, you can't really get that record out there. It's a whole different world now. I don't know that I'd really want to be trying to start from the beginning, but you do have a whole different technology going on, and you can make records in your basement, your bedroom, your living room. It doesn't really matter anymore, and a lot of young people are doing that very thing and making some great stuff. So who knows? The world changes all the time.
You've continued to record. You did a wonderful Christmas album, did a live album, and still, as we mentioned, touring constantly. What's your favorite part of getting out there and performing these days?
The people and the music together. Every time I'm on stage, the people are there because they enjoy the records. They love the songs. They love, taking off their wristwatch, so to speak, and putting, stepping into the time capsule for a moment. They always say, you just don't know how young you made me feel tonight, because we can all go back in time when we were young and bulletproof and full of vim and vigor, and life was, the world was our oyster kind of thing, so it's the people and the music, because I never think of it as me up there performing for the people. I think of it as me and the people there together just playing the music that we loved and grew up with, and though I do keep my show pretty much centered around the Union Gap songs and, all the material that we recorded, I do step aside from it sometimes just to play some old rock and roll or something. I've got a great memory from meeting Elvis years ago, so it makes me doing something by Elvis very valid. But yep, that's what it's all about.
Watching a couple clips on YouTube last night, and your voice in some ways sounds even stronger than it did. How have you been able to maintain that through the years?
Well, first of all, it was God's gift to me. Excuse me for the that happens to be in the morning. I was lucky to have parents who both were singers, had beautiful voices. Both of them were musicians. My mother still plays piano to this day, and she taught through the years and was a marvelous musician. My dad is no longer with us, but he was a sax player and a singer, and that's how they met in high school and on into young adulthood. They were in a band called the Dick Halverson Big Band in Minnesota, and they decided early on, that they wanted to have a family, and in those days, music was a tougher career to be involved in. Tour buses weren't as much fun. They were a little cold and drafty kind of thing, but I was just lucky to have the genetic thing to begin with, and the way I keep it in shape is by singing, by doing my exercises, by my rest and activity, by my nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. So, it has become stronger in ways, and it changes over the years, but that's just how life is.
That is Gary Puckett of Gary Puckett and the Union Gap joining us on the Best of Downtown, a Sunday morning program. Rich Kimball, Brian Stackpole with you. We'll wrap up our music edition next as we talk with multi-Grammy award-winning singer-songwriter Mary Chapin Carpenter. This is Downtown. Best of Downtown Sunday morning special music edition here with a little music from Grammy Award winner Mary Chapin Carpenter.
She makes his coffee, she makes his bed.
Mary Chapin's had one of the great careers in country, folk, pop music, crossing over to several charts over the last 20 years. We had a chance to chat with her last year when she released her latest album entitled Ashes and Roses, a very autobiographical album for her, especially the song What to Keep and What to Throw Away.
Well, I certainly felt after I wrote that song, well, it was you're right, it was a sort of a moment-by-moment account of a day that I had where it had come time to clear out my former spouse's possession. And there's no instruction manual, as I've been saying to audiences. And so I wrote the song almost as a way to help myself get through that experience. So yes, it was helpful in processing it. And it was somehow at the end of it, or by the end of it, it feels like you're coming from a place of strength and accomplishment as opposed to sorrow.
You and I are the same age, and we reach a point in life where you expect some of these things to happen. You know that you're going to have to deal with this, but when things happen in such a short period of time, the sadness and the grief can become, if not comfortable, almost expected, and you really address that in the song Learning the World. Grief sits quietly on the passenger side, where grief becomes a palpable presence, a companion in a sense.
That's exactly right. I felt for such a long time that it's as if I was being accompanied wherever I was going in the car, that there was almost like a presence in the house, because this grief and this sorrow and just sort of almost despair, basically, was so sort of, it just permeated everything. And so that's sort of almost the thought that I had one day was that as if it become a companion as well as a guide to trying to sort of transition from this place of sorrow to a place where it was really time to sort of press the restart button in life.
Well, that transition seems to take place about maybe 3/4 of the way through the album. There's certainly some optimism in Soul Companion, a wonderful duet with James Taylor. How did that pairing come about?
Well, again, I can't compliment you enough for it. Sounds like you really have listened to the record, and you have just sort of expressed how I feel about it, in that there is a narrative arc to this record, and about, like you say, about halfway, 3/4 through, things start to shift, and the sun comes out a little bit. And the duet with James, it was a song that I had written, and when I finished it, I remember thinking to myself, and I expressed this to my manager, that I could just hear him on it. But it never occurred to me to ask him. You know, this is a man who's very busy, and I just contorted at the idea of asking that. But my manager, that's his job. So he went out there and he did it for me, and to my just incredible delight, and just such an honor. He told me he loved the song. He said he felt like it was a box, and he felt like he was opening a gift when he was listening to it. So I was so grateful, and it just makes me cry whenever I hear it.
You also enlisted the help of fans to do some videos to go along with the song.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had this idea that, you know, how easy it is now to sort of include your fans and just be interactive, and social media being, you know, the facilitator that it is. why not have people send in pictures of them with their soul companion, whatever that may be. As far as I was concerned, it could be a person, it could be a beloved animal, it could be, it could be an item in your closet if that's what your soul companion is, like a guitar or something like that. So I wanted to make a video and just put the word out and see if, and just put it up on YouTube. But I thought of it as just one video, and we received over 800 pictures. And my manager said, I don't think you can just make one video. How are you going to pick? It's just impossible. So we just decided to do a series of them, and that's how it ended up being that way. I believe there's 7 total.
We're talking to Mary Chapin Carpenter on Downtown, and we talked about the optimistic arc of the album, and by the time of New Year's Day, the line is, we dwell on possibility on New Year's Day. It's a song about an actual dream that you had about a friend meeting up in Baltimore, and to me in that song there's such a wonderful sense of coming through all of this and seeing the other side.
Well, that's right. It was a dream I had this was the last song that I wrote for the record. And I wrote it last New Year's. I had this dream the night before, and indeed I was in a bar in Baltimore with a friend of mine, a very dear fellow who I came up in the bars and clubs of Washington D.C. with. He's just a wonderful songwriter, and I don't see him very often, but he's just one of these people that you have friends that you may not see them or talk to them very often, but when you do, you feel like you have a knowledge of each other, and you can just pick right up where you left off, however many years ago it might have been. And in my dream, I remember thinking, oh, God, I just love being with my friends, and I just want to remember this when I wake up. And sure enough, the next day, I remembered it, and I started writing things down. And the line, we dwell in possibility, of course, it's from Emily Dickinson, and I just was trying to incorporate, the great symbol of New Year's is that symbol of renewal, and in many ways redemption and sense of possibility
you talk about
be the new person we want to be, and that sort of thing, and having life start again, and so that's certainly what the song is.
That is Mary Chapin Carpenter as we wrap up the Best of Downtown Music Edition for a Sunday morning. Been great to revisit just some of our favorite music guests over the last couple of years, and well, there are a lot more we didn't include, but certainly enough to do another music edition down the road at some point as well.
Yeah, I looked at some of the stuff that was on the cutting room floor, and we left out definitely another show and a half.
That's for next time we do it here, just to break it up a little bit on the Best of Downtown for your Sunday morning. Don't forget, Dale Duff, Clem LeBrie, get your day started tomorrow morning at 6 on the Morning Pitch, and we are back with a live Downtown Monday afternoon. Maine baseball coach Steve Trimper, latest on the Red Sox from our Boston insiders, and much more. We'll see you Monday at 4 on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.
Downtown, just listen to the music of the traffic in the city. Linger on the sidewalk where the neon signs are pretty. How can you lose? The lights are much brighter there. You can't forget all your troubles, forget all your cares. So go downtown. Things will be great when you're downtown. No finer place for sure. Downtown, everything's waiting for you. Don't hang around and let your problems surround you. There are movie shows downtown. Maybe you know some little places to go to where they never close. Downtown, just listen to the rhythm of a gentle bossa nova. You'll be dancing with them too before the night is over. Happy again. The lights so much brighter there. You can't forget all your troubles, forget all your cares. So go